The following may contain offensive language, adult humor, and or content that some viewers may find offensive. The views and opinions expressed by any one speaker does not explicitly or necessarily reflect or represent those of Mark Radulich or W2M Network. Please listen with caution, or don't listen at all.
To On Trial, where we debate the merits of your favorite movies. Hope you're ready, Hollywood, because if on trial.
Oh! Ow, All rise. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Wapner presiding. This is On Trial, the podcast where we debate the merits of your favorite movies, as that sexy song just told you in the intro. I am your host, and I guess I'm in the role of defending this here turkey tonight, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And on the docket is the 2001 Michael Bay historical, spectacular Pearl Harbor, starring everyone's favorite Bostonian, Ben Affleck. And joining me tonight,
Tennessee.
That's right, with that wonderful accent that he does. Ladies and gentlemen, my brother from another mother, Mr. Canada, the Calgary Flame. Ladies
I am not a Flames fan.
Podcastus interruptus. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Graham. How do you do, sir?
I do well, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. This is the second On Trial this week, and my really my only question, the only thing I have concern about is that the first time you've heard the On Trial theme since we redid it on Sessions?
I think I've listened to 2 On Trials, including the one you guys did on Big Hero 6 earlier in the week, which, by the way, I really enjoyed. That was a good episode.
Yeah, man. I love recording with Evan. I love recording with Evan. When I can get him talking comics and he's in his zone, he's a lot of fun to work with. But as you were saying.
Oh, for sure. I will say that's the first time I've ever seen the new graphic for this, because I never, ever actually watch any of these on the internet unless I'm actually on them. So I never see the visuals. It's like, wow, those are some well-coiffed kind of little characters that you have on there.
Yes. The AI image generator and music generator are my best friends. ChatGPT is my therapist. My friends are Bing image generator and Suno.ai. And when Skynet finally rules the earth, Jesse and I will be there to guide humanity through its slavery.
Okay, quick serious conversation. We just got a Roomba. I want you and Jesse to stay away from trying to reprogram that damn thing. I've already told Alicia several times it's a Cylon.
I'm not making any promises. Andrew Graham, you and I, if we don't podcast at least once a year, we definitely try to get together for Veterans Day, which is this Monday. If you're watching this live and if you're hearing it thereafter, we recorded this on the Thursday before Veterans Day. And every year we like to do like a triple feature or a long road to ruin. We've done a couple of On Trials for this and that. And I have to tell you, my dirty little secret, come closer. I have a secret I have to tell you. Yes. I have been wanting to do Pearl Harbor for a very long time. And I got to tell you, I had not seen Pearl Harbor before last week when I viewed it for the first time with my unwitting children. They did not know, nor did I know, that this, as it was called, Titanic-type war movie was over 3 hours long. When I think 3-hour epic, historical love story romance, I think Michael Bay. I don't know about you.
Most definitely not.
Yeah,
gasoline explosions, we definitely get that in that movie, and that's part of it.
Sure.
But not massive romantic
Yeah, no, this was not exactly Dunkirk. Um,
We're getting ahead to my prosecution already.
all right. But yeah, we've gone kind of back and forth. We've definitely collaborated on ideas for what we're going to talk about for Veterans Day, to celebrate Veterans Day, as it were. And I mentioned to you Pearl Harbor, and you went, no, 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 Beth, and you tried to run away, and I had to grab you by your waist, and and then your wife came and she brought you back over her shoulder, and she was just like, you can't escape this. All right. So in all seriousness, when I suggested Pearl Harbor, what was your first thought besides, oh no?
It's a little bit. This is one of those things where it's like that saying in life where the two worst things are not getting what you want and getting what you want. And it's like, this is one of those movies where, when we get together on a movie, we want to have something to talk about. I mean, we want to go beyond the idea of it's fine.
Yeah.
And
boy, say that 10 more times so that everybody else will hear you.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
No,
it's fine.
No,
it's fine. It's fine.
No, I come on here and have something to talk about because I don't want to do 2 hours of it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing about this one is that, I'm trying to think. I've maybe only seen this movie twice. Once when I originally saw it in 2001 in theaters, and this last week, where I had to split into like 3 sittings.
You saw this in theaters. Were you trying to get into a fraternity?
No, it's because the trailers for this movie were awesome. No, seriously, go look up the trailers. I mean, like there are things that I think we'll be able to talk about from positives, and like the trailers they had basically consisting of all of the ominous shots of Japanese warplanes flying through the mountains of Hawaii to some dirges that made it look really great. And then you actually saw the movie, and it definitely wasn't really great.
Yeah.
And on one time, this movie is a study in bad. Like, this is more dinosaurs. This is wrong filmmaker, wrong time. This is everybody who's been a part of this has done better stuff. But it also gives you a lot to talk about on it as to why it's a bad movie. Because there's better versions of this, and there's better parts of this that have been executed by other people, or many times the people in this movie, and on many other occasions, sometimes in the same year this movie was released.
Yeah, I did not see this movie until, like I said, last week. And part of it was disinterest. I mean, like, there's some stuff by Michael Bay that I've enjoyed. There's a lot of it that I haven't. And I wasn't in 2001 running to the theater to see everything that was Michael Bay. If it tickled my fancy, then I was going to go. But I looked at this and I went, I don't think I want to see Michael Bay's take on the Pearl Harbor attack. So I skipped it. And when I tell you, like, there was a typhoon, as it were, of bad reviews, both professional and amateur, that came from this movie, it definitely warded me off. It was one of those where I had heard it was so bad. How bad was it? It was so bad that it wasn't worth the time sitting. I didn't even, like I said, I didn't even know it was 3 hours. So it wasn't like this isn't worth spending 3 hours in the movies. It just isn't worth seeing.
Yeah.
And Ben Affleck, even in 2001, was an iffy actor. If he had a good script and a good director, he rose to the occasion. And I think if you look at the great length and breadth of Ben Affleck's career, he's batting about 500. He's either really, really good in stuff, or he's really, really laughable. And I heard nothing about Josh Hartnett or anybody else in this. Ben Affleck this was around the time that Ben Affleck was leading man Ben Affleck. Like, they were putting him in, like, not Jack Reacher, but the
Some of Wolfier's.
Yeah.
He was good in.
Jack Ryan. They were putting him in Jack Ryan movies. Yep. He was getting this was big money Ben Affleck at that.
This was 2 years before Daredevil.
Ugh. Anyway,
you know what? I have a lot more affection to that movie. I mean, like the Netflix Daredevil is the absolute king at this point, but I don't hate the 2003 Daredevil all that much.
There has been some reconsideration of that movie, but I still have PTSD from it. So anyway, my point is, I just stayed away. And then time moved on, and I forgot about it. But when I started doing podcasting, and especially when I started going through the treasure trove of just dirt worst movies to come out and talk in here, especially with this format, where it was definitely guided along the principle of take the worst movies, find something good about them. That's kind of the motto of On Trial. Okay, it's like, okay, at some point I got to get to Pearl Harbor. So I'm glad I'm doing it with you because, if you could just tell the people, you're kind of my war history guy, my military history guy. So so who better than Canyon or Andrew Graham to talk a war picture on? So brief, like 50 words or less. Who, when I say you're my military historian, what does that mean exactly?
So in terms of my background, I actually have a degree in history from the University of Calgary. My concentration was primarily in Canadian history, but that also worked into a lot of military history. So it's been something that I've always had an interest in. I try and keep up, kind of reading as many books as I can about it. A lot of it's I've probably shifted, spent a lot of time initially probably on World War II, and then I'm a little bit more of a generalist with a bit of a tinge to World War I at this point. Not as much time on the Pacific theater, but I mean, as we've talked a whole bunch around the Pacific when we did that show a few years ago, look in the archive and things along that line. And I mean, Pearl Harbor is one of those significant events when it comes to world history and to the history of the Second World War. As Josh Hartnett said, this is exactly when World War II started.
For us, for sure.
One of the lines in this movie, yeah. But it is one of those significant.
the British are going, wait, what? Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, exactly. Everyone's like,
it's a little egocentric, America. A little egocentric.
Well, a little egocentric, Michael Bay. But anyway, but I mean, like this one was really, really, pivotal. Obviously, brought the United States fully into the Second World War. Also, from like a technical, tactical innovation point of view, like this was one of the first really significant, decisive uses of naval air power, because this was an entirely naval air-based attack, basically.
Right.
And there had been kind of warning signs that something like this had been coming. There'd been a couple of different kind of demonstrations where it had been shown that air power can inflict a lot of damage on naval assets. There'd been a couple of actual attacks and things like that kind of proved its potential effects. So that's kind of where it all sits together.
All right. So let me quick read the description here. Pearl Harbor is a 2001 American romantic war drama film directed by Michael Bay, as we've said, produced by Bay and Jerry Bruckheimer, and written by Randall Wallace. It stars Ben Affleck, Kate Beckinsale, Josh Hartnett, Cuba Gooding Jr., Tom Sizemore, Jon Voight, Colm Feore, and Alec Baldwin. It's Tuesday, Lemon. The film features a heavily fictionalized version of the attack on Pearl Harbor by Japanese forces on December 7th, 1941, focusing on a love story set amidst the lead up to the attack, its aftermath, and the Doolittle Raid. The film was a box office success, grossing $59 million on its opening weekend and $450 million worldwide, becoming the sixth highest grossing film of 2001, but received negative reviews, like historically negative reviews from critics, who criticized the story, long runtime, screenplay, and dialogue, pacing, performances, and historical inaccuracies, although the visual effects and Hans Zimmer's score, I mean, does Hans Zimmer ever do a bad score? Were praised. It was nominated for 4 Academy Awards, winning in the category of Best Sound Editing, which makes sense. It was also nominated for a Golden Raspberry, including Worst Picture. All right. I'm just going to add this little caveat, and then we can get into debating this movie. So, like I said, I showed it to my kids last Friday night. I came home from work, and they were like, Father. They called me Father. They said, "Will you show us another movie, Father, from the days of yore?" And I said, "Come along, children. We're going to see the great auteur, Michael Bay, boom, and his take on Pearl Harbor in World War II." And what was hilarious about that was I didn't know it was 3 hours. So we're about an hour into the movie, and we're nowhere near the Pearl Harbor attack. Not even close. And what we've watched is this dull, lifeless, almost hysterically bad love story between Kate Beckinsale, Josh Hartnett, and Ben Affleck. And my son looks at me and he says, "Father." He called me Father, rather annoyed. He was like, how long is this movie? When do they attack Pearl Harbor? That's why we're here. And we pause the movie and we see that it's a little less than midway through. And then I checked the wiki and I looked at him and I said, son, I'm sorry. I have failed you as a father and a leader of this household and as a film critic. It's over 3 hours long. And he demanded I take him back to his mother at that point. He just walked out the door. My daughter instantly turned into a potato. It was the whole thing. They were not thrilled. And when it was over, Andrew Graham, my son cheered. It was like he was at a football game or something. He was like, and it was like the end, and he was like, "Woo!" and like ran out of the room crying.
It's over.
Yeah, we won, and ran away. So that was my experience with my children. I will say their assessment of the film follows most people's assessment of the film. The Pearl Harbor attack is fun to watch, though that too is also excessive and long. Everything else about this movie sucks. My son's like, I want to learn to edit, and I want to do a proper edit of this movie that is... He said two things that I thought were funny. He was like, this needs to be 90 minutes, and 40 of it is this fucking attack. It's like 10 minutes of setting this up, like 20 minutes to end it, and we're done. I'm like, all right, Jonas. He was like, also, wouldn't it be funny if this was a double feature with Oppenheimer? And I was like, oh. Yeah. My son, current genius and future leader of the free world.
On some level, I mean, it's a little bit of an appropriate bookend. You start with Pearl Harbor and you end with the atomic bombings of Japan.
Yes, as habitual line crosser says on TikTok, don't touch the fucking boats. All right. So the story goes a little something like this. We have these two corn pokes. They are friends off in the hills of Tennessee. They become pilots. They are going to join a squadron. In the midst of joining up, Ben Affleck falls in love with the nurse that approved him, even though he had dyslexia. That's a whole thing that happens. They fall in love as lead actor and lead actresses do in movies. And then he is sent off to fight in the war. So he is sent to Britain to go do that. Ben Affleck is, and he is presumed killed in action, at which point Josh Hartnett returns home, tells her of the bad news, and they mourn his death, and in proper mourning fashion, they fall in love with each other. And then, dun, 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 Ben Affleck returns. And he was like, I thought you would wait for me. And she says, I thought you were dead. And so him and Danny, Josh Hartnett, get into a fight about this because you stole my woman. And he was like, well, you're a zombie. You know, that kind of thing. While this is happening, there was an event going on in the world. It was called World War II. You may have heard of it. And America stayed out of the war for as long as we could. So we were selling arms to the Allies. I don't know what we were selling to Germany, but we were selling something to them because there's whole books written about this. IBM and the Holocaust. Go read it. In any case, we were taking advantage of our neutrality in the war by selling to both sides until Japan got an idea. And their idea was thus. You know, we bomb Pearl Harbor and take out their ability to make war in the Pacific. We'll give ourselves a tactical advantage, and they won't fight back. How could they? So they may have misjudged us. So there's a long lead up in the movie to them planning the attack on Pearl Harbor, and eventually they do. They send their air forces over here. They bomb the living shit out of Pearl Harbor. They sink a carrier, capsize another. There's a bit where Ben Affleck and Danny jump into their planes and they shoot off a bunch of Japanese aircraft. And eventually
Sizemore shoots himself down with a pump action shotgun.
Yes, we are shooting planes with handguns. It's a whole thing. So eventually the attack is over, and there's the decision like, well, this will not stand. We are now in the war, and we must make war in Japan. And so the decision is we're going to bomb Tokyo, and we're going to do that by having bombers, converted bombers, do short-range takeoff off of carriers, which I don't want to. I'm not Robert, and I'm not going to explain the physics of how these things work. But typically, you don't send large, giant aircraft taking off of small carriers. By comparison,
right.
to the landing fields, these things usually need to take off. There's a whole weight to speed to air ratio thing that has to happen. So there's a level of tension, dramatic tension in the movie of how do we get these giant ass aircraft with their deployment of weapons in the fucking air so they can get over to Tokyo and bomb it. Oh, by the way, they also need gas to fly.
Now, Mark, do you want to know how they did this in the movie?
They science the fuck out of it.
They used a montage.
Yeah. Yep. They sent over Matt Damon, who was on Mars growing potatoes, and he scienced the fuck out of it, and they figured it out. That's how that happened. So, I love The Martian.
There is. I got to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
There's a great channel that I've been watching for years called SF Debris. It's its own website. They do a lot of like Star Trek reviews and stuff like that. But there's this hilarious clip. It's about 2.5 minutes long of the host trying to explain World War II, and he explains it entirely through movies.
That's amazing.
So it's like the Japanese get mad, and so they attack Pearl Harbor. So Ben Affleck and Josh Hartnett get in their planes to fight, and then they have to call Captain America to help and everything like that. It's really, really, really well done. Oh, and they almost forgot to mention Pearl Harbor was almost stopped by that aircraft carrier that had to come back in time, but then had to go back to the future.
Perfect.
Final Countdown's a great movie, by the way.
I really wish Michael Bay had gone with that script. Anyway, so
What, have you never heard Final Countdown?
Only the Europe song, baby.
Oh no. Okay, so very brief idea. There is a movie where I want to say it's the modern day USS Enterprise from like 1985 gets beamed back into the Pacific in 1941, and they literally run into the fleet of the Japanese fleet before it attacks Pearl Harbor, and it turns into a big moral dilemma of it's like, we're American officers, but we're from the future, so is it our duty to act now to actually, go and unleash 40 years of technology upon this fleet and prevent the attack on Pearl Harbor? Or is it in our best interest to, stay out of the way of history as much as possible? The bad news is that they actually do decide to act. They do decide to act, and they're literally like launching aircraft when the portal opens up again and sucks them all back into the future.
That's fantastic.
I'm like, God damn it, that would have been a lot of fun to watch.
All right, so we clean up after Pearl Harbor. The decision is made by a FDR who has polio and is wheelchair bound, and he stands up and shows defiance to his cabinet and says, if I can stand and you can stand, we all can stand, or something along those lines.
President Roosevelt, rise.
and he whipped out his lightsaber and he's like, Tokyo we go. And so the Jedi Council said yes. Anyway, so they were like, all right, well, we need to quick retaliate against this. We are America, goddammit, after all. So it's the Doolittle Raid. That's the thing. And so Danny and Rafe, who's Ben Affleck, get in their planes. They get in their bombers. They train a whole bunch of guys to be able to fly these modified bombers. They get on the aircraft carrier. They get on the carriers. They head out towards Japan. They are then spotted. They're looking through a telescope, and they're like, "Hey, there's Americans afoot." And I go, "Well, fuck. We are too far out. We don't have enough gasoline to make the journey. We don't have enough money to cover the mortgage on the farm." But they start, ripping guns out and putting broomsticks in. It's the whole thing. And they go, "Well, away with you." And they bomb the fuck out of Tokyo. But in doing so, Danny, who, by the way, has now fathered a child with Kate Beckinsale, dies. And Ben Affleck says, "I can't quit you, Danny." And Danny says to him, "Go home and raise my son," because that's what men say. And so Ben Affleck, having returned home from a successful mission in Japan, matches up with Kate Beckinsale again, and they raise Danny's son. And it ends with Ben Affleck taking Danny's son out for a spin in an airplane. And that, my good friends, is Pearl Harbor. All right, Andrew, this is your time. This is your moment. This is your release of tension. Prosecute this movie, sir.
May it please the crown. Also, I think we should get some. It's funny. We're talking about this whole movie, and it's like this is the first time in like 10 years I've thought of the show Jag. What was the naval legal show? It makes perfect sense.
At some point, we really do have to talk about A Few Good Men, but today is not that day.
Well, aren't we going to do that as part of the triple, as part of the Sorkin stuff?
Maybe.
I don't know.
I never wrote that down. You didn't give me a date. I ain't writing shit down. We'll talk about it later.
All right, fair enough. We'll talk about it later. All right.
Fix it in
We're
post.
going to start on Pearl Harbor. I think the theory of the case is that this is a movie that, in a lot of ways, is a bit of a Frankenstein's monster in terms of checkbox exercises. Because I think what somebody and this is a Disney movie, by the way, this is who this was produced under, had the idea of what has been successful in Hollywood the last few years. In 1998, Titanic, a romantic melodrama, made a shit ton of money and won Academy Awards. And then, in 1997, that's Titanic. In 1998, Saving Private Ryan came out and totally reinvigorated World War II movies. So somebody along that line, and this probably was Randall Wallace, because, Randall Wallace is the stamp of negative quality that whenever you're looking for a script, basically said, what if we combine Titanic, Saving Private Ryan, Step 3 success? So there's kind of your base of it. And the rest of the movie just falls through these issues of it being a checkbox exercise. So, you have your two leads, and I'm not even going to address the fact that Ben Affleck's character is called Rafe. In fact, it's silly. But it's like, everything is like in there just to say, yeah, we got this done. So it's like, hey, the two boys are playing and pretending they're fighter pilots and stuff like that. But we have to dispel their illusion. So we have to have them have a bad interaction with Danny's father, who's played by William Fichtner, and is offended by being called a dirty German. And then you have to have, the meet cute, and then you have to have the relationship, and then you have to have, Ben Affleck go missing, and then you have to have the other two take up with each other. And then you have to have them basically restage. I cannot remember the name of this movie. It's actually another movie about World War II. It was Something Forever. But it's that shot of the two people like making out on the beach and the waves come over them.
Mm-hmm.
I think you know what
I know, but I'm also now thinking of the beginning of Grease.
Yeah, exactly. Well, same idea.
Yeah.
And it's all just this checkbox exercise where it's like, oh, hey, and we're going to have, we're talking about Dory Miller and have a couple of checkbox there, and then we're going to do Pearl Harbor, and we're going to talk about how nefarious the Japanese are, but not too nefarious, because we'll talk about that in a second.
Mm-hmm.
And then Speech, and then Doolittle Raid, and first Pearl Harbor attack, then they have to fight people, then they basically have to grab two sets of Japanese planes and start bashing their heads together, because of course mid-air collisions happen during air-to-air combat, but not when you generally have two people fly into each other and have the other ones follow and crash in head-on. Anyway,
set
then of course
to the
they
Blues
have
Brothers.
And again, that movie did it better.
Yes.
So you have all of those points. Then they go back to Pearl Harbor. They start saving ships and doing all of the kind of the going back to the rant that I got to do on 13 Hours. Like they do like just blatantly manipulative stuff. Like, oh, hey, we're gonna have guys holding their hands up and grabbing their hands as they drown and things like that, and just kind of go through all that. Then they do, of course, then they have to go to the hospital and see everything that's going on at the hospital. Then they have to, then Speech, then Doolittle Raid, montage. Danny gives himself up. The two original ones stay together, raise Danny's kids, movie over. And it's just, that's kind of the whole root of every problem in this movie. Like, I mean, going down to decisions, like, why did we give Ben Affleck that ridiculous accent? He's not. I think there's been like one movie where he had an accent and he was good, and I'm pretty sure that was the Last Duel a couple years ago, and he was barely in that movie. And the thing that I kept on coming back to whenever I was watching this, it's like basically everybody in this movie has been involved in something either relatively recent to that movie or in the same year where they were much, much better in it.
Yeah.
Like, Ben Affleck was better in this basic same kind of role in Armageddon. And God knows he had a lot more chemistry with Liv Tyler than he did with Kate Beckinsale.
I don't want to interrupt your prosecution, but Armageddon
Yep.
is such a guilty pleasure of mine. I
How can I
love
help you?
Armageddon. Yeah, God, I don't want to close my eyes. I want to fall asleep because I miss you, baby, and I don't want to miss a thing. Oh my God,
I
Armageddon
nearly
is
did
so
open
much
up by
fun.
singing that, and then it's like, shit, wrong movie, Mark. Sorry. It's like I was thinking of a better movie, but it's like Affleck was better at doing this whole bit of kind of the
I legit
kind of
cry
the
at the end
funny.
of that movie when he's saying goodbye to Bruce Willis. Like,
Oh yeah,
I remember seeing that in the theater and being with my friend Jupak, and I called him Jupak because he was Jewish, and in case that wasn't obvious, and me and Jupak just like the whole thing, like that. Like, I can't exactly remember what the dialogue is with him and Bruce Willis, but it like bawled
Yep.
my eyes out.
Was it
Great
him and
movie.
Bruce Willis, or was Bruce having the final conversation with Liv Tyler? Because
Either way.
the end of that movie is good. But
Yeah,
anyway, like that was better on that. Like,
yeah.
Josh Hartnett was in Black Hawk Down that year, as was William Fichtner, Fichtner was in that, as was Tom Sizemore. All three of those actors were in Black Hawk Down that year, and a way better movie with way better performances. I mean,
right.
Yeah, we talked about Hans Zimmer. Again, like the score was good. It was fine. But I think it was also a little too subdued, and I'm kind of wondering if he got some guidance to keep it as subdued as possible. Because again, this is 2001. This is also the year of Black Hawk Down and Gladiator, which are two like Hall of Fame Hans Zimmer scores.
Right.
So it's like you keep on going through all of this, and it's just like I've seen it better elsewhere, and I've seen it better executed. Like even if we want to talk about kind of the whole kind of throwback approach to doing like, if you want to do a 40s melodrama, World War II story, he should have given this to? You should have given this to Joe Johnston.
Well, you don't give it to the guy who did Bad Boys.
No, you don't.
Who historically in Bad Boys 2 felt the need to record a scene of Will Smith driving Hell's Bells down a countryside in in Cuba or Dominican Republic, whichever one it was.
It was Cuba.
Driving through every house he could find.
Yep.
Which is awesome. But when I think like this needs a deft hand and an air of subtlety, I don't think Michael Boom Bay.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, like the reason I bring up Joe Johnston is like you look at Captain America: The First Avenger.
Yeah, yeah.
Like totally, that gets like. I mean, I know there's some people who don't like that movie. I really do. But again, like it gets the feel right. It gets the tone right.
Yeah, absolutely.
The chemistry between Evans and Atwell is fantastic. Like it does again all of those things really, really well.
Sure.
Okay, so moving on from there, I mean, should I just get historical at this point?
I mean, stick to the broad points. Let's not
broad
spend the next hour in the minutia.
Okay, maybe I'll go to story first. And okay, maybe we just need to start off with Mr. Randall Wallace. Who wrote Scotland's favorite movie, Braveheart. And I say that sarcastically, the Scots kind of hate that movie.
Right.
They're glad for the tourism.
It's an awesome movie, but it is not historically accurate.
It's not historically accurate, and the thing that really pisses me off is that if you ever read anything about William Wallace, he was actually cooler in history than he was in that movie. He was actually a smarter guy. And again, yeah, we're not going to go down that exhaustively, but it's this kind of really weird, broad checkbox exercise. Because I think, one of the things, and again, we can talk about it because like, having this kind of Forrest Gumpy, hey, there's another movie they grafted from, idea of, oh yeah, it's the same guys who were in the Eagle Squadron who then fought all over Pearl Harbor, who were then whose entire squadron then ended up being transferred to go to the Doolittle Raid. It's like, guys, one of the problems with this approach is, one, we know the name of every single guy who got up in the air at Pearl Harbor that day. We also know the name of every single guy who was involved in the Doolittle Raid. And instead we're going to kind of drop in these two yahoos. And then at the same time, you're also trying to turn this into like some kind of somewhat more serious examination of history that again is done in such kind of a fast and slapdash way. And I think what I probably want to address a little bit is the weird way they address the Imperial Japanese in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And just for clarification, I did this during the Pacific. I'm going to try as much as I can to consistently refer to Imperial Japanese, just to make sure that we're all talking about the regime that was in charge of Japan at that time, and not make it anything more than that. So, okay, good move casting Mako as Admiral Yamamoto, because he's probably one of the again kind of big figures in that military at the time. But one of the first things that just I saw, and there's just one-liners in this movie that kill me, is when they're trying to explain why they're attacking.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, the Americans have embargoed our oil and we only have 18 months left. And I'm going to use another historical analogy. Someone's going to get pissed off at me for this one. That to me was kind of the same version of when somebody says the Civil War in the US was about states' rights. And then the other person asks, to do what? Like, there was no reference to the fact, oh yeah, we only have 18 months left to prosecute a massive and genocidal war against all of Southern Asia.
Right.
So it has this weird relationship where it's like, we want to, we're going to give them justification, and we're going to have these little moments of somebody having a picture of their wife in the cockpit, or like reading letters back home or whatever. But on the flip side, we're also going to have nefarious spy guy around who I kind of wish they had actually just came out and said that he was actually a historical figure.
Mm.
So he was actually a member of the Japanese consulate. So it also kind of blurs this line where it's like, wait a second, is this guy actually Japanese? Is he a Japanese American? Things like that. And I wish they would have clarified that a little more. And then, of course, they have the strafing of the hospital.
Right.
Which didn't fucking happen. Like, there were about 70 civilians killed during Pearl Harbor, some of which were aircraft that were shot down, or I presume probably people who were working in and around all the bases in that area. But there wasn't like, oh, hey, let's go attack the hospital sort of thing. So It's kind of that, there's this weird imbalance between trying to portray them as evil, trying to do not so evil, and just everything in this movie is a little bit of a hash. Again, going to some basic craft elements. I mean, this movie is way too long. So about 2 years ago, you and I and Robert had the conversation around the Batman, and it's about 3 hours. I think it's 3:05.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about the length of that movie, and I've since rewatched the Batman once or twice, and I don't feel the length on that movie. I felt every single fucking minute.
you and my son. My
Like,
daughter noped out halfway through to start playing on her phone.
I think I was playing on my phone within about 15 minutes of starting this damn thing. Like, it is just that long, and it's just the love stories just takes up way too much of the time without again that energy, that magnetism within the story.
Yeah.
And this movie is 3 movies.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably at least 2 movies, because you could do one movie just on Pearl Harbor and do one entirely different movie on the Doolittle Raid.
Mm-hmm.
But again, why they felt they had to tack on that extra hour onto the end of it just made it feel interminable.
Yeah.
And I think at least one reviewer I saw had mentioned that, it's because Michael Bay would refuse to end a movie with America losing.
Sure.
No, for sure. And I mean, again, like, There are you also just get to see your normal, again, Michael Bay craft elements. There's a lot of stuff that's cut way too fast. There's a lot of stuff that's just goofy in it. Like, again, dude, you're not going to shoot down a aircraft flying at 250 miles per hour with a a 12 gauge shotgun.
Pull! I got him! I shot down a bomber!
The only thing would be better than that if he had a gun dog with him that he sent to go actually drag the plane back.
Some fucking plane in the dog's mouth.
But there's stuff like that. There's the quick cuts. Again, it's Michael Bay, and he is definitely one of those directors that has those signatures and have those blind spots. I mean, we've talked about George Lucas in the past. I'm trying to think on who else we've kind of referred to in that kind of category, who just has like
they are master craftsmen at creating visuals, but they understand nothing else about the art of filmmaking.
Yeah,
Tim Burton.
Oh, for sure. Though honestly, I do like more Tim Burton stuff.
That's fine. You can like what you want to like, but there's not to cut in, but there's a lot of one of my big complaints as we do any one of the formats on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network, whether it's this or Triple Feature or Damn You Hollywood, is all of these auteur master craftsmen in terms of direction, where the problem isn't the visuals. They create memorable, wonderful, exquisite visuals, but they don't know how people work. Yep. They can't seem to get a story together. And they're so consumed with creating that perfectly twisty tree or that wonderful sequence of bombs or, space battles that resemble World War II dogfights that we lose the heart of what makes any motion picture good. And that is the ability of human beings to relate to one another. And And that's somewhat our own fault as an audience. We tend to be swept away by beautiful visuals. And then it isn't until we've thought about it, if we've thought about it at all, that we start to think, well, geez, this wasn't a very good movie, but it looked pretty. But isn't that the Faustian bargain, is that a lot of the stuff looks pretty, but is shallow? And our need to chase that is the problem. So, I'm going to let you go back to your prosecution, but I needed to throw that out there. Michael Bay is doing what Michael Bay does, and I'll talk about more of this when my defense is up. But Michael Bay created a movie full of wonderful images and a shallow story. It must be a day that ends in Y.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, again, you'll get your defense in a second. Like, there are some great shots in this movie. The entire sequence of the Japanese aircraft flying through the Hawaiian mountains and approaching and everything like that are fantastic. The sequence on the bombing of the Arizona is great. There's lots of really interesting stuff in there. But again, even then, it still starts to. It's interesting at this point. You start to see some of the worst habits of Michael Bay that would end up manifesting themselves at large in the Transformers movies, starting here, where you start to see a lot more of that quick cutting. I mean, Jesus Christ, this entire movie is filmed in the golden hour. Like, it has that kind of golden glow the entire time. Right. It's kind of wild. You start to see that in some of the ways he treats his characters. Like, a lot of the, you have your two characters who you more or less play straight. There's a little bit of comedy with Ben around. The initial meet cute, that sequence goes on way too long with Beckinsale. And then
sorry,
a lot of the other
worst part about this review for me is I agree with so much of what you're saying, but I still have to defend this stupid movie.
I'm so sorry. But it's like, even when you look at the other members of the squadron, there's like the really good looking guy, and then there's the guy with the stammer. And it's kind of the fact that in a lot of cases, Michael Bay doesn't like a lot of his own characters and kind of takes it out on them. And I'll reference a little bit of that just as we talk about craft, and actually specifically as we talk about Michael Bay as an auteur, because I had to go back and review this. YouTuber Lindsay Ellis, who I think also author, I guess, has done a series called Michael Bay in Film Studies, basically through the view of all of the Transformers movies. I think we've referenced that series here multiple times, and it talks about how does Michael Bay function. How does he function as an auteur? Why can you never remember what happens in his movie? They talk about a lot of gender theory stuff. And they talk about not only how does he treat his female characters, which I think definitely Kate Beckinsale is a little bit of a victim of that. The shot of her when they walk into the hospital and she's holding like 2 IV things,
Mm-hmm.
and I think she's trying to. They can't figure out if she's supposed to be gorgeous or exhausted at that point. And then the way how he doesn't quite like a lot of his own male characters is all starting to manifest here. And again, that'll really go down the line once you start seeing Bad Boys 2, some of the later Transformers movies and things like that. But I mean, in summation, Mark, I mean, this movie's just kind of a Frankenstein that wrong director, wrong approach, wrong stories, and prosecution rests.
It pleases the court. I have used this phrase many, many times, and I will continue to use it because it's always true. Film is a visual medium. And while the prosecution makes an outstanding case about many of the elements of filmcraft in this movie, nobody went to this movie because they were invested in any of the love story being told. Nobody went to this thinking, I want to go see the new romance starring Ben Affleck, Kate Beckinsale, and Josh Hartnett. They went into it because Michael Bay was known for being really, really good at blowing stuff up on screen and making it look cool.
Objection, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
3/4 of the trailer of this movie was talking about the attack, and like you had 2 frames of the relationship.
Exactly. But that's overruled. That's my point. Everybody went to this movie to watch Michael Bay blow something up. And even if you are a toaster oven and you mostly cut class in your high school years, you know about Pearl Harbor. Your grandfather talked about it. Okay? People know what happened on Pearl Harbor. That's when the terrorists flew planes into the buildings. Listen, we know there was a big attack that day. And so if there's a big attack and then the movie is called Big Attack Movie, you go to the movie to watch the big attack. And that is really well done. One could argue, and the prosecution does, that the sequence is a little long. I would argue that it's kind of like watching an opera. That sequence, what sells it for me, what really holds it all together is the entire sequence has beats to it. That sequence tells a story about what happened that day, that dreadful day on Pearl Harbor. And I've seen the Transformers movies, and not to sound like my colleague on Damn You Hollywood, Robert Winfrey Esquire, I have seen the Transformers movies. I have suffered through the Transformers movies. Those action sequences are cyborg bukkake. It's just machinery everywhere. They are as
Given
unreadable.
how much he makes those...
Go ahead.
I was about to say, given how much he has all of those things like drooling and snarling, you're not too far off in that description.
You can't see a goddamn thing. Those are exhausting sequences, as opposed to this, where you get a very clear sense of what the danger is, what's going on. And yes, sure, some of it's silly, shotgun firing at a plane and all of that. Some of it's manipulative, but for the average movie-going audience, who cares? We are there to be manipulated. We are allowing we have consensually come into this relationship going, manipulate me. I am here for the emotion. And so we sit there as an audience and we watch the planes come in and we watch the attack and we watch the horror and we watch the dread and we watch Americans do heroic things, saving their fellow countrymen and trying to figure out what is all happening in this attack. And it's great. Does it take too long getting there? Sure. The defense grants you that. It takes way too long. And I could sit here and agree with the prosecution that getting to the Pearl Harbor attack is fucking interminable. It made a 10-year-old boy cry, I tell you. But I think it's well worth it. I think Michael Bay rewards patience in this movie with the Pearl Harbor scene. And yes, when it's all over, you're exhausted. You're like, oof, that was a lot to get through. And if a Chiron had come up and said, and then we dropped 2 bombs on Japan and they gave up, Finn, we would have been just as happy. But there's a whole other hour of the movie left. And we now have to do the Doolittle Raid. And I would tell you that as historically inaccurate, and I'll get to that in a moment, as that is, I still think in terms of, I mean, it's no battleship, but I think it's a lot of fun, the Doolittle Raid, the way it's presented. I made the joke about The Martian. We have to science the fuck out of this in order to, it's a very science fiction-y problem of we have X amount of miles, Y amount of gas, Z amount of weight, and we want to bomb these cities. We so badly want to bomb this city. We must bomb this city. We are compelled to. This has to happen.
We bomb the city on rock and roll.
We are going to bomb this city on rock and roll. We're going to bomb this city all night long. And I think the movie does a really great. I think it's one of the better things about the movie is that they do a really great job of getting the audience invested in this counterattack. That they do a really great job of bringing the audience along and seeing. Because here's the thing. I sat there with a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old who the movie had long lost, and they just wanted it to be over. But they were interested in seeing how they were going to solve the problem of the weight, the distance, and all of that, and the energy expended to get there. They wanted to see how they were going to solve the problem. And when they started ripping the guns out and putting the broomsticks in there was a palpable amount of tension felt by the audience. Going, is that going to work? Because, broomsticks. I think in terms of a entertainment, in terms of visual presentation, I actually think Michael Bay does a really good job with the stuff that matters. Because I will not dispute the prosecution's assertions that the love story is boring, banal, and interminable. It is. No one's arguing that. But I can cite 20 movies where there are elements of it that suck, that are boring, that are terrible, but it doesn't matter because you're well rewarded in the end for sticking through it. And ultimately, I think that is Pearl Harbor's strength, is that at least they got the attack right, visually, and they get the Doolittle Raid right, visually, tonally. I think there's an appropriate amount of tension in both scenes. I can't find a whole lot, besides the historical inaccuracies, wrong in those scenes, and to me, that's what matters. Your witness.
I'm going to jump in and say one thing actually to add to your case, particularly when it comes to Doolittle Raid. There is one part of this movie that absolutely works, and that's Alec Baldwin as James Doolittle.
Yes.
He actually understood the assignment on this one. He brings the right kind of energy to it. He kind of plays, of course, this character who was a real character in history and was quite a personality. And he makes you believe that he's pulling all these guys together to pull this entire crazy ass thing off.
It without sounding like the A-Team or something retarded like that, Alec Baldwin really does present this as kind of a suicide mission. And they're like, well, what if we don't make it? He was like, learn to speak Chinese, or remember this phrase in Chinese because you're going to need it. Alec Baldwin, it's something that we talk about a lot here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, and I have actually said this exact phrase on a different podcast. We really do pay special attention to how masculinity is presented in the modern culture. And 20 years ago, Alec Baldwin is a man's man. That is a guy saying, we as men, we as soldiers, we as Americans are going to do the job that we are trained to do. And if we die doing it, all the better and all the glory. And that's really cool. And you living in today's movie-going culture, you tend to forget that because you don't see it very much. And it was nice to see in this movie. And I applaud Michael Bay for using the exact right tone for that level of masculinity in that character.
And he's a bit of an outlier when it comes to Bay characters. Oh, I guess maybe the only one I'd probably compare him to is probably John Mason in The Rock, where there's also a little bit of, like I'd say, a lot of other characters in Michael Bay movies kind of get, either full throttle or all the way back. But it's like he's fun. Like going to his first scene where Ben Affleck's apologizing to him, and he's trying to talk about homages and stuff like that, and he turns to him and he says, "Lieutenant, that's absolute bullshit, right? But that's really good bullshit." Like there's a wryness about him. There's charm. There's all those sorts of things that you'd want in a commander who's about to say, "Oh yeah, by the way, guys, we're going to do something absolutely insane and unprecedented in the history of warfare."
Andrew Grimm, you're not only a military historian, you're also a Radulich and Broadcasting Network podcast historian.
Yes, I am.
You have been there almost from the beginning, and you've listened to almost every one of our shows: the bad, the good, the farty, the Taco Bell shitty stories, all of them.
Yes.
And you poor unfortunate soul. Do you remember the Magnificent Seven podcast that Robert and I did for Damn You? The one where we actually coined the title "Damn You Hollywood." And the thing that we talked about. Go ahead.
I was about to say. So one, I think it was coined before that, and two, I never listened to that one because I've never actually seen the movie, and oftentimes I'll skip listening to Damn You Hollywoods until I've actually seen the movie that I want to see. I've just never seen that version of the Magnificent Seven.
Okay. It's absolutely the Magnificent Seven that we came up with Damn You Hollywood.
Yeah.
Because I've gone back and listened to it. But one of the things we talked a lot about on that show is the way men talk to each other.
Yeah.
Which, look, say what you will about Michael Bay. He's not as bad. He's not quite the autistic robot that George Lucas is, but he can also have a fundamental misunderstanding of how people operate. He tends to go, men have penises and girls have vaginas, and that's how he understands emotion. We get you, Michael Bay. We do understand you, sir. However, somewhere along the line, somewhere in here, and I don't know, maybe it was a second unit director or somebody, made Michael Bay a real boy momentarily, but he understood how men talk to each other. He understood that intrinsic relationship among men, and it comes out in the scene where Alec Baldwin is chiding Ben Affleck. It's one of the better scenes of the movie. Like,
oh, it is.
I look, is Pearl Harbor terrible? Sure, but I'm not really arguing against that. But I think it's a throwing a baby out with the bathwater thing to say it's all bad 100% the way through, because there are magic moments in this movie. The movie's just so goddamn long. It's kind of like, okay, there are great moments in this, but it's so long it gets lost in the morass. Yeah. And there's more bad outweighing the good, but it would be wrong, dead wrong, 100% wrong to say there's nothing good about this movie. The war scenes are good. There are great moments. I like the stuff with Dan Aykroyd. When Dan Aykroyd
stuff is interesting.
I think they got a really good actor to do that part, and it's funny because my son reacted really big to the scene where Dan Aykroyd's like, we can't crack this, and we don't want to give you wrong information, and he's talking to the military personnel. The military is like, your job is to crack it, go do it. And like, what's Dan Aykroyd supposed to do? Flip the table over? Like, he's got to follow orders. Like, we've been there. We've all been in a job where we've been in a position of telling the boss this isn't doable, and the boss says, I don't give a shit. Your job is to do it. Figure it out. And and we don't have thousands of lives at stake if we fuck up or if we miss the mark. And I think Dan Aykroyd captured that moment really, really well in that scene.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I like that character in terms of he was somebody who was, and again, this is like, and maybe something I'll do the challenge on your point is that I think that's one of those things that Michael Bay, in terms of the conversations between and among male characters, I think something that he's, I don't know if regressed is the right word, but has fallen off of in later movies. This one does it because, again, he treats somebody whose job it is to necessarily, be a cryptographer with the same level of importance and gravitas as somebody's is to be a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
And I don't think they do that the same, and they definitely don't do that the same way in later Michael Bay movies.
I would like to present as evidence to the court the movie Independence Day.
Sure.
Independence Day is an awfully silly movie. but it has some brilliantly funny, exciting, celebratory moments.
Yes. Yep.
Bill Pullman's speech at where he ends it with, we're going to survive because today is the day of our independence, and everybody cheers, and there's sperm everywhere, and it's all fantastic. Everyone's covered. It's great.
What version were you watching, man?
Don't worry about it, but it's on.
I was about to say you were watching like the extra extended version.
Yeah, I was watching the French version. France gets it all. France gets it all. But it's becoming a weirder podcast by the year. Anyway,
I can historically verify that.
Yeah, the graph. As silly as the FDR standing in his fucking wheelchair bit is, my kids cheered at that. They were like, "Woo!"
Oh, yeah.
Like they don't fucking know. They don't care either. The FDR is crippling polio at the time. He's not getting out of that chair, but it was a moment. It was a cinematic moment, and for two kids who don't know any better, and for an old man who's so well beyond caring about stuff like this, I was like, "Woohoo!" I wanted FDR to pick up a machine gun, Rambo style, and just start firing it into the air.
The thing is, he might have actually done that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they show it like he's still wearing the braces, and I think he might have done that. Might have been a little bit of a, pardon the phrase, a party trick that he had, where he could actually get himself mobile if he could lock the braces in, and so every so often he would do that to kind of.
Well, I was reading the historical inaccuracies part of the wiki on this, and one of the things they made a point of saying is FDR did not do that.
Okay.
Whether he did it at other, to show up to the ladies, who knows? But if he did it, he didn't do it in that moment, in that way.
Yeah, exactly.
But who cares? And my last piece of evidence that I will submit to the court, and then I will cede my time. Michael Bay out and out said, this is not a history lesson. This is not a documentary. This is entertainment. We are taking a historical event and we are creating an entertainment venue out of it. And maybe it took too many liberties for some people's comfort. And that's valid. You're allowed to, as a veteran, you're allowed to, as a historian, go, this is horseshit and I'm not entertained by it. Okay. We're not all the same, though. And I'm going to appreciate the entertainment aspect because that's the assignment. Come in, watch the Boom Show, leave. And the Boom Show wasn't half bad. The defense rests.
So in other words, this is a cross promotion where for the on trial of Gladiator and the review of Gladiator 2 later in the month. Are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? I hear voices. I did that on Monday too. So I showed Jonas Gladiator a few weeks ago. He couldn't wait to watch Gladiator.
Yeah.
And we're gonna obviously go see Gladiator 2 when that comes out in a few weeks. He turned to me when it was over and he was like, I was very entertained by this movie, but it is way too long. And I was like, yeah, welcome to the Ridley Scott School of Filmmaking, taught by Martin Scorsese. So I'll be curious to see how the second one is. But we're here to be entertained, and for the parts that should have been entertaining, they were entertaining. Like, what else do you want from this movie?
Yep.
Your final word, sir, before we start to head into the conclusion of this podcast?
I just got a quick news alert here. So, Michael Bay, you have been convicted of directing this movie by a judge of good standing in this court. Given that it is the holiday season, you will have Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas and You" pass through your eardrums until you are dead. May God have mercy on your soul.
Did you practice that?
I've been thinking about it for a while.
Okay. It's like, you had that one in the holster, didn't you?
It was either that or you will have Love Actually pass through your eyeballs until you're dead. May God have mercy on your soul.
Okay. All right. If we're done debating the movie, I do want to say I agreed with it's way too fucking long. This is a long movie.
Oh God.
Look, Kate Beckinsale and Ben Affleck have no sexual chemistry together.
No.
They were like two pieces of bread at different temperatures smashed together.
Yeah.
Like, one is too soft, the other one's too hard. Like, what are we doing with you two?
Well, and I think it's weird because I think they were both weighed down with their accents.
Yeah.
Because Beckinsale's a Brit. They're both trying to. I mean, Affleck's trying to do the Tennessee accent. She's trying to pull a mid-Atlantic. They're both trying to do this very broad, very melodramatic. Again, they're trying to turn this movie back 40 or 50 years. But it just doesn't quite work. I mean, maybe you put them in a different movie and they have great chemistry, but with what they were saddled with, and again, not even talking about the script, it just did not work.
Yeah. This Ben Affleck has a few funny moments when he breaks his nose and then he's on the date with her and he hits himself in the nose.
That was good.
I was talking to somebody earlier tonight and we were talking about just like, you know, injuring yourself, and I said, yeah, I've definitely had a few play through the pain moments in my life, and I have absolutely been where Ben Affleck has been. Where I think I told the story in January. I went out with my friend Heather, and Heather is, you know, a hot blonde. And, you know, and I don't want to look injured, weak, or anything else in front of her. So I'm at the Machine Head show or whatever fucking concert we had gone to at the time. And I like pull every fucking muscle in my torso. And I'm like trying to stay, you know, upright and, you know, not fall on my face. Not to mention that, no, you know what? Sorry, it was the 90s cover band show we went to. And so there's like hot girls all around me. That she's there, and I just don't want to look like a, you know, like a sad old man who's keeling over because he hurt himself singing. So I'm like, okay, I'm fine. And she's like, are you all right? I'm like, I'm good. You know. And so when Ben Affleck's like, that hurts something fierce, what he wanted to say was, ow, 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 fuck me, why, God, why, ow, ow, ow.
Yeah, he was bearing through.
Like, I've been there.
He was biting down his mouth guard and going for it.
More times than I'd like to recount in just the past year alone. So, like, we've all been there, you know?
Oh, for sure. I think, when was it? It was probably about 12 years ago. I took Alicia to go see Wicked, the theater show. And right beforehand, I got seriously sick. So I was probably pretty close to an overdose on cold medicine to try and make it through that show. Probably running a low-grade fever the entire time.
And when I had my second bout of cancer, and I would go to work, and I was telling somebody the story recently. Every day I would go up, and the same thing would happen. Every day I would put my uniform on, I would get in my car, I would drive to work, I would go into my office, turn around, I would punch in the clock, turn around, go to the bathroom, immediately throw up. You know,
yep.
And I would get it all out of my system, literally, wipe my face, check to make sure I hadn't had vomit on me, and then I go back to work again.
Yep.
Like, that's just what you do. And I think, you know, those kinds of things, those kinds of human moments were captured nicely in the movie. Yeah, Josh Hartnett doesn't seem to know what he's doing in this movie, acting wise. I think he's doing his level best, but I don't think he was given a whole lot of actor's direction.
Yeah. Hartnett's kind of an interesting case. Like, he had a moment there, and he's kind of having a renaissance right now. But it's like, he did some interesting stuff in like that early 2000s era, because he did, again, the same year as this, Black Hawk Down, which he was quite good in. He did a movie called Lucky Number 11 that I actually really enjoyed.
Oh, Lucky Number 11's great.
Yeah, that's a triple feature where we've got to talk about some of the more unique action movies that came out about 2006, 2007, because like Lucky Number 11, what's the one I'm thinking of? Oh,
Shoot 'em up where the one actor stabbing people with carrots.
Shoot 'em up's not bad. There's another one I'm thinking of. What is it called? It's Joe Carnahan, Affleck's in it, Reynolds is in it. It's the Hitman movie. I cannot remember. I love the movie. It's oh, this is gonna bother me now.
Well, there's something I wanted to talk
about.
Smoking
Aces.
Oh, Smoking Aces is great. Really quick,
Yep.
Because if I don't say this, I'm gonna be mad at myself. I've been waiting all show to say this. The one thing I truly hated about this movie, the one thing, because like this, like the dialogue is laughable, but you know, I've said all the good, I've kind of said the bad. This was the ugly for me. Now look, we're not prescient, we're not omnipotent, we don't know everything, and I don't think it's our plan in life to mourn the loss of a loved one forever. An appropriate amount of mourning, sure, but we are human beings, social creatures, and we will die without love and affection. We cannot live in isolation. And this movie would have you believe, Andrew Graham, this movie would have you believe that Kate Beckinsale was supposed to stay alone forever and not move on when she was told by the military that Ben Affleck had died in action. And so when he comes back, you as an audience member are like, betrayed! He is betrayed by this whore! And his terrible friend, this devil, who's swooped in and stole this woman away from him. And you're like, even my kids were like, he was dead. He was dead. What was she supposed to do? It was one of those like lazy writing moments for me.
Oh yeah.
Like, you can't ask us as an audience to buy into this idea that he had somehow been wronged. She knew it wasn't he was missing in action. Like there was the hope of him coming down. He was dead. And when he showed back up again, they were like, we were told you were dead. Sorry. Like we acted as normal human beings would do. Because again, it's not like it happens, he dies, and he's immediately in Josh Hartnett's pants. Like there was an appropriate amount of mourning, and they came together through the loss of their mutual friend. As people do. And so, if anything, if I was in your shoes and I was prosecuting this movie, that would have been my lead prosecution. That
that's fair.
The expectation that these people will not act like human beings would bother me and did bother me to no end. Pissed off a 10 and a 13-year-old to boot.
And I think I've heard stories about that. Like people who thought were dead during Second World War got remarried, and then somebody came out of a POW camp like 2 years later or something like that. And a lot of cases, people just kind of shrugged and moved on.
Not to be stupid about this, but like, wasn't that the whole thing with Endgame? Like people were presumed dead for 5 years. People moved on, and then look, magic, and they all returned, and they're like, I don't have a house, a wife. What happened here? Like,
And then the best joke in No Way Home is the one teacher who's like, I thought my wife was snapped out of existence, but actually she just pretended was for 5 years.
Perfect. Like they're absolutely people doing that. All right.
Yeah, and that just goes to addressing your point. Like, it just goes to the whole nature of it's like we have to do a melodrama, and we have to have 3 actors, which means we have to have a love triangle. So it's just kind of filmmaking by checkmark.
Yeah, that when you were saying that earlier, I did agree with that. Like, this felt like we have to hang some lazy writing on this masterful action sequence, and almost kind of like taking my entire argument as their modus operandi. Like, no one cares what we do, except that if that was your thinking going into this, then don't do that first hour of the movie the way you did it. Don't do it at all, as a matter of fact. Let's get to know. Let's set up the world. Let's get to know our characters and get these kids to the mall as fast as possible. The attack on Pearl Harbor should have happened 30 minutes into the movie. Period.
Did you ever see the Midway movie that they did a couple of years ago?
Yeah. Midway, Dunkirk, 1912. We saw them all.
1917. Yeah. I never actually saw the Midway movie. I'd be interested to give that a watch to see how they handled that one in terms of like you said, getting the kids to the mall.
Wasn't that Roland Emmerich who did Midway?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
I know Robert and I did a Roland Emmerich war movie, and we had a good laugh at it. And I think it was Midway. Dunkirk was Christopher Nolan, wasn't it?
Yes, and then Sam Mendes was 1917.
Right. Which, if you enjoyed Andrew Graham tonight, and why wouldn't you? He's a sexy boy. He's just a boy toy. That's what he is. You should check him out on A Damn You Hollywood That I Fucked Off For, and that was 1917. It was him and Robert. Just a wonderful conversation about a good old-fashioned World War I movie taken in one shot, or at least made to look that way. Fantastic.
Yes. Yeah, the period of time where I got to review 1917 and Dunkirk in close order to each other was a good one.
Yes. In all seriousness, and we're going to start to close out here. Andrew Graham, I enjoy talking with you. I truly enjoy our podcast, especially when it's just me and you. We don't have 6 other people, and I can't talk about the Catholic Church and the Jedi. I'm never letting.
What about
that
the ownership of Captain America's shield?
I was thinking about that earlier. How
Why did you do that to yourself?
because honestly, it's the most memorable part of that podcast.
Oh God.
Um, if anyone's like, what is your podcast like? Like, I know what you do. You say you review movies. Just doesn't everybody? Doesn't every neckbeard who has an internet connection review movies? And the answer is yes. But what makes your podcast different? What makes my podcast different was the 6-hour discussion on what entity owns Captain America's shield, and we argued about that like it was states' rights and slavery. It was poor Alexis was never the same after.
I
talk about a woman regretting her life decisions.
And it's funny though, like
so good.
It was funny, like I rewatched Black Widow with Annabelle for the first time the other night, and she enjoyed it quite a bit. And
did she enjoy the part where Black Widow falls from orbit?
That's still silly, but it's like, you know what? There's still parts of that movie I think I like a lot better than even on first viewing. But anyway, that prompted me to go back and rewatch a couple of the trailers for like Thunderbolts and New World War, or sorry, Brave New World, right?
Yeah,
whatever the next Captain America movie is.
I wish it was called New World Order and Falcon lawn darts somebody into a tool shed. That's a lot of wrestling references right there.
They had the reference to the other Captain America in that trailer. And I can't remember Isaiah.
Yeah.
But anyway, and that was one of the best parts of that series. And we always come back to talking about who owned the goddamn shield.
You certainly do, Ollie. Anyway, Andrew Graham has been with me for many, many years. We've talked a lot of war stuff. We did the Band of Brothers. We did Generation Kill. We did the Pacific. We did 13 Hours. We've done, we did a Whiskey Rebellion where we just talked war movies the whole time.
Yep.
What else? We did The Crown.
Yep.
We did every season of The Crown. And we did The Right Stuff. Those are the big Andrew Graham shows. So check out Andrew Graham and all the various podcasts he's done with us. He's fantastic. Very smart kid. Good to his mother. All right. With that said, that is the second on trial for me this week. That's not all I do, folks. I do a little podcast called Damn You Hollywood. Check it out. It's our new movie review podcast. And the last one we did was a fiasco. It was Venom, The Last Dance. That was last Monday. A week ago Monday. And then and that was all I did that week because it was Halloween week. This week, on Monday, me and Evan Bevins, good to his mother, some language. We did an on trial for Big Hero 6 where we got to talk about the Big Hero 6 comic that it was based on, which no one would know that because it's so goddamn different. On Sunday night, I will be on Jesse Starcher's Source Material podcast, and we'll be talking Batman, City of Bane. On Monday, Veterans Day, the actual Veterans Day, we will be concluding our look at Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 3. That'll be myself, Robert Winfrey, Jesse, Dorian Price. I think Alexis Haina will be off working, so she's not going to make that one. Alexis and Dorian are taking Alexis and Jesse are taking a second shot at Batman Caped Crusader. That'll be Wednesday. And this Thursday, because you let a girl in and she always wants to take over like the New World Order, Mick Wanamaker was let on one Metal Hammer of Doom jukebox. And after one, she's like, I have a million ideas for shows. And I said, the fuck, you go to the Alexis Haina School of Podcasting? You come on one show and you want to be your own boss and take over and start pitching me shows? It's anarchy around here. I'm about ready to walk out into the woods and live deliberately, Andrew Graham. You know what I'm talking about. Well, anyway, Mick Wanamaker, she's pitched me the idea of celebrating Slipknot's 25th anniversary of their debut album, self-titled. So we're going to talk about that on the Metal Hammer of Doom Jukebox. The last episode of the Metal Hammer of Doom Jukebox has my favorite clip all year. And it's the 15 minutes we did on Clowncore. It was so
Please tell me it's something up on YouTube.
Oh yeah, I clipped it for YouTube. It's there.
Okay, I need to go track it down then.
Yeah, discussing and reacting to Clowncore. It is the highlight of my podcasting year so far. It is brilliant stuff. So check that out. That's on our Motley Crue canceled Metal Hammer of Doom Jukebox. But yeah, a week from tonight, Metal Hammer of Doom Jukebox, Slipknot 25th anniversary. Myself, Jesse Starcher, The Coop, Robert Cooper, and Mick Wanamaker. All right, so that's all for me. Thanks. I'm driving. Andrew Graham, I hear you put on pajamas and roll around with children. I don't have Ronnie to do those jokes with anymore. So
Wow. That's a
tell
new
us
one
about-
and made it weirder, Mark. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. You want to correct the record before the FBI investigates you in another
That'll
country?
be the RCMP in this case, but anyway.
Sure.
Okay. Recontextualizing all that, I'm a longtime martial artist. I do train at Esteem.
That's what we're calling it.
Thanks, Mark. I do train at Esteem and Havoc Martial Arts here in Calgary, Alberta. Actually, next week we will be having the Enter Jeet Kune Do retreat, a Canadian retreat with Sifu Harinder Singh Sabharwal. That'll be starting from Friday, November 15th, going through the 17th at Esteem and Havoc. So please go do your searches on the internet, on Facebook, and if you're able to and are interested to attend, we'd love to see you out there. Other than that, I don't think I have anything on deck for the rest of this year, but it's starting next year.
Next. Yeah. Go ahead. Finish up your plug.
I was about to say, starting next year, in the spirit of the David Simon kind of series, we are going to be starting a review on the works of Aaron Sorkin, including The West Wing, The Newsroom, and then the alluded to triple feature that Mark and I still need to work out the logistics of.
You need to give me a date. That's that's all.
Yeah,
I
fair
need
enough.
to hear.
Hey, I am the hardest man to schedule in podcasting. Trademark.
It's you and Evan Bevins, yeah. But yeah, so Jesse and I review the old TV. Alexis reviews the new TV and the blue TV. And so Andrew Graham was like, "Hey, you guys did a 2-year run of just David Simon shows. What if we did the West Wing?" And Jesse cried. Jesse's like, "I don't want to talk about politics."
I don't think I want to talk about politics either.
And then Andrew Graham and I beat him up and stuffed him in a locker and says, you're doing it anyway. So, yes, we're going to do all 87 seasons of The West Wing. It'll be great. Fantastic. Starting in January. All right, folks. Court is now in recess. I want to thank Andrew Graham for hanging out with me tonight. I have a big smile on my face and a tear in my eye. This has been the happiest moment of my life. Now, I really enjoyed tonight's show. This was fun. I'm glad we did this. And I think we gave the movie a fair hearing. So, with that said, for Andrew Graham, I'm trying to find the button. Be well, be safe, and behave.